Good morning. Welcome to the Energy Transition Center, where CRIN hosts the Project Cafe, showcasing our technologies that are going to change and shape the energy ecosystem in Canada and beyond, actually. Many of you already know CRIN is a network of networks. We welcome networks, organizations, and individuals to bring together the resources, the industry's challenges, and the ideas, the innovations that will help us address our challenges moving forward. CRIN focuses on 7 technology themes. Today you will be hearing about 3 of them: methane, land and water. And I'm Sally Dawood. I work across the 7 technology themes, bridging the gaps, making the connections that we all need. If you have not already joined CRIN, having just heard how fabulous the network is, we encourage you to join. It is free, it is easy, and it gives you access to the different members of the network, whether you are an organization or an individual. And all you have to do is agree to the social contract. And before we get started, of course, there is an important acknowledgement of this land. I keep hoping that one day I'll be able to know this by heart. Today, however, is not that day. Acknowledgement of the land is an important step towards reconciliation. Today, we're gathering from across Canada and, in fact, North America. Please take a moment to recognize the land where you reside and work. This event is being hosted from Calgary, where we acknowledge and pay tribute to the traditional and unceded territories of the peoples of Treaty 7, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. Without any further delay, I'm going to introduce our first speaker here from Kathairos, Chief Marketing Officer Kelly. Sorry. We have with us today Chief Marketing Officer Kelly Doody. She brings extensive business development and marketing communications expertise to the energy transformation and decarbonization space. Kelly has a passion for merging powerful technology and the most pressing challenges of our time. And we're proud at CRIN to be able to bring her talent and Kathairos' technology to the Project Cafe this morning. Kelly?
Hi, everyone. I think I only have 5 minutes here, so I'm going to try not to be frantic and also show you a video, because I think that is something that we are proud to have gotten to a point where we are able to produce videos now with our customers and partners, and I think they can sometimes speak better than I can or anyone from our team. But yes, we're just down the street on 11th Avenue, actually, in the 11th Avenue Place building with a number of, I think, Evers up top, and there's a few other really neat, actually, clean technology companies in our building as well. And the last thing I want to do today is allude to the fact that this has been easy, or that we haven't been without the struggle that a lot of our startup collaborators and comrades are. And if ever, I find at trade shows often I'll have founders and other clean tech startups or companies come to us and say, how did you get this partner, or how did you find that customer? And we're so willing anytime to talk and share and collaborate. In fact, our marketing mission this year in 2024 was straight up to hold the mic for our producer partners and, truthfully, the engineers and innovators in the middle that are making clean technology adoption happen. So not just the C-suite and the talking points, but truly finding out. And I saw this as a Calgarian myself and as someone in the space, really feeling inspired inspired by what is being done. And so, sharing stories is really what we're trying to do more than ever we're only 3 years old, but it feels like 30. I think I'm aiming maybe over there or somewhere. There we are. Okay, so in a nutshell, what we do is methane elimination from remote well sites. So traditionally, particularly on natural gas well sites, whether they are conventional, so just a single hole, or unconventional, lateral wells, they have been operating without grid power or electricity, and thus, in order to operate their pneumatic devices, which are the air-powered or high-pressure gas-powered devices that run their control systems, separators, dump valves, compressors, etc., on their little sites, they have relied on methane, so a slipstream of methane pulled out of the ground. They don't send it down the sales line, they send it to actuate those devices. And once they're activated or actuated, the methane is then released to the atmosphere. We know how potent methane is as a greenhouse gas, and we know that eliminating methane from pneumatic devices is a very low-hanging fruit opportunity for producers to reduce emissions in their upstream operations. The challenge, of course, has been that for all of those well sites you just saw, that was Colorado, New Mexico, Texas in particular, less so in Grand Prairie where you have similar but multi-well pads, but the same problem where grid power is going to be a challenge to operate electric devices. The opportunity for an off-grid, affordable, and effective, reliable solution was desperately needed because to date, there's a whole lot of MRV, so monitoring, verification, reporting, and just continuous monitoring technologies, but there's not a lot in the abatement space. There is air compressors. And air compressors come with a lot of moving parts, a huge amount of expense, and the producers have simply said, we can't do this. It doesn't make sense. We can't put a $150,000 air compressor on a site that's producing maybe $50,000 worth of product per year. The breakdown, the parts, the supply chain, et cetera, has all been a challenge. And so our founders conceived of a singular, it's like a large Yeti cup. So it's a thermodynamic vessel. If you know anything about cryogenics, we put liquid nitrogen inside, refill it once a month, and then the tank, just through the fact that liquid nitrogen wants to escape back to being nitrogen gas, just like in your coffee cup, as it warms, it expands into gas, and that expands by 700 times. So it provides an excellent, inert, clean, emissions-free fuel source for the pneumatic devices. And once so we swap it in, it runs the pneumatics, and then it's vented back to air. And nitrogen makes up 78% of the air we breathe, so it works quite well. And I think that Lindy's going to play the video here. So this is just something that shows where we've gotten to, and I think one of my points here today is just how do we do what we do? We've linked arms with giants like Chart Industries. I guess we should have practiced it. Maybe Lindy did.
Methane venting is the most pressing emissions issue facing the oil and gas industry. Producers require a technology that can effectively solve the problem at the speed and scale necessary to meet regulatory demands. Together, Kathairos Solutions and Chart Industries are meeting the challenge. As exclusive partners, we are bringing profoundly simple well site mitigation to North America's oil and gas producers and hundreds of thousands of remote facilities. The backbone of our technology is liquid nitrogen. The Kathairos system stores the cryogenic solution in a standalone tank and vaporizes it into clean, dry, inert nitrogen gas used to actuate well site pneumatics at exactly the volume and pressure they require. The result is an off-grid power source that runs purely on the laws of thermodynamics with no moving parts, no maintenance, and no outside power required. Each tank is engineered to house a continuous, unattended supply of nitrogen capable of powering up to 50 wells and 500 pneumatic devices. Equipped with a 24/7 monitoring unit and remote data transmission, the system provides empirical mitigation data and certifiable ESG reporting insights. The Kathairos liquid nitrogen system is manufactured by Chart Industries. Each storage vessel begins its journey at a Chart facility where skilled teams of engineers, welders, and assemblers work to build the proprietary Permasil microbulk system using Chart's patented technology, proven processes, and the highest quality materials. Week after week, hundreds of tanks roll off the assembly line, ready for immediate transport to well sites across every major oil and gas producing basin from Pennsylvania to Utah, Texas to Alberta, and anywhere in between. Upon delivery to the well site, the system is easily tied into existing infrastructure and, with the flip of a valve, the site immediately becomes methane emissions free. From the moment an order is placed, the units are guaranteed to be built and delivered within 8 weeks or less. Kathairos' operating network is the largest of its kind in North America. It pairs our seasoned field personnel and custom vehicle fleet with an array of liquid nitrogen plants and localized storage systems. The result? Trusted remote operations, ample and affordable nitrogen delivery to producers, and an unparalleled solution for methane elimination. Together, Kathairos and Chart continue to support the oil and gas industry by helping to eliminate methane emissions and embrace a lower carbon future.
So I think what I'll end with here is just to say that I was trying to do the math on the months last night, but March 2022 was about 2.5 years ago. It's not very hard math, but it was for me. And we were funded by CRIN, and this was a huge game changer for us. It was literally the starting point for Kathairos. There was, aside from Chart, who early on saw what we were doing and had relationships with my CEO, our founder, Dick Brown, from his past days in cryogenics in Alberta's oil and gas industry. Other than that, it was CRIN, Ovintiv, and Cenovus, as well as Exxon in the Marcellus Basin in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, that said, we think this could work. And from there, Ovintiv immediately put their hands up to say, we want to be part of this CRIN win that Kathairos had for, I think it was $1.36 million. And 1.58, and we were able to start deploying with them really quickly. And what was incredible was because of Alberta's offset system, they're making money on the actual installation of these units because of how many emissions they have abated to date. So from 60 well sites in all of 2022, where we thought we could abate about 18,000 tons of CO2 equivalent per year, with 2 producer partners. Today we find ourselves with actually about 60 active producer partners. There's not a single major that we're not working with now. And our carbon counter is on our website, and it's the first thing you see when you walk into our office. So we're really proud of the work that's being done. We're only still about 55 employees full-time across North America. But the really important thing for us was, again, planting the flag, building out the network before we were ready. For lack of a better example, pulling a Tesla all through 2023 and just planting field stations, operators, which really meant a truck, a guy or two, and saying to operators, we're ready for you, let's scale around this, and we'll create the most affordable methane elimination system possible. So that's where we're at today, and yeah, we're looking forward to what's ahead. Just quickly, we have a few new technologies coming out, and we just applied for an enormous opportunity that we're really crossing our fingers around with the MERP, so the Methane Emissions Reduction Program in the Biden Climate Plan. It's a huge opportunity for us to address even harder to reach well sites. So we've partnered with the Stripper Well Association of North America, and we're hoping to address the wells that haven't had a solution to date at all, other than to shut in when regulations come into play by 2028. And then just more empirical data, which everybody needs, and more partnerships. So thank you very much for having me, and whatever you'd like to chat about, I'm available after this or anytime down the road. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. That was such an excellent example that we have of how one of our innovations has used the network so effectively. and has now expanded well beyond Canada. We have another phenomenal network example, and I would like to introduce Andrea Crook. She's the co-founder of CEO of and CEO of OptiSeis Solutions, a leader in sustainable solutions for high-resolution subsurface imaging and analytics. She is the current Canadian Society of Geophysicists 2025 Distinguished Lecturer, and we are also honored that she sits on the CRIN Board of Directors. Andrea?
Thank you. So CRIN has been instrumental in helping us advance our EcoSeis technology. OptiSeis is a company that specializes in subsurface imaging. For those of you that know more details about how we image the subsurface in a variety of different applications, from oil and gas through critical minerals, carbon capture, geothermal, and nuclear, we specialize in seismic data. And I'm going to give you a bit of an update on the project that CRIN sponsored, which is EcoSeis. And the problem that we set out to solve is that of seismic cut lines. So for those of you familiar with seismic data, or if you've ever flown over northern Alberta, you might have seen these seismic cut lines through the forest. We saw a really good example of lots of well pads. Those are all the well pads cut in Kathairos' presentation. To get to the point where we're actually drilling the wells, we need an image of the subsurface. And if it's in a remote area where there's lots of trees, we're going to have to cut lines to safely deploy the equipment. Even in areas where there's not a lot of trees, like here in Australia, they may need to go in and plow the ground to have safe access for the vehicles as they travel through. And this is an extreme example of seismic cut lines up in northern Alberta for the oil sands, where the resource is only at, let's say, 100 to 400 meters deep, and they need to make those lines very close together. So the challenge that we set out to solve was, how can we get really good quality subsurface data and reduce the number of surface cut lines? So our solution, EcoSeis, utilizes some existing technology and some proprietary technology to come up with an integrated solution. The first thing we looked at in the project was, what if we just make these lines narrower? So if we can miniaturize equipment, then we don't need to cut the lines quite as wide. And the bottom example shows a seismic program with the smaller cut lines. But that can have challenges with both field operations and frequency content of the data. So we need to do more through our EcoSeis project to come up with ways to enhance the miniature sources. The other thing that we look at is, of course, cutting fewer lines. But if we're going to go to alternative sampling, yes, we can reduce the line density, but we still need to make sure that it's safe, the way we deploy these, and that we're going to get good processing out of the data. And then we also, when we're looking at a full solution, we want to consider the environmental constraints in the area that we're working in. So when we set out with the project, we were looking at solving this challenge that COSIA had put forward, and that is to reduce the land footprint and emissions. And our target goal was to reduce them by 35% when we started the project back in 2020. CRIN was instrumental in 2022 in helping us actually go to the field and verify that with these new designs, we're actually going to maintain subsurface resolution. So to do this, we had to go and acquire comparison data sets. The other part of the goal of the project was, whatever we do in the field needs to be safe and efficient. And if we can do this at the same or reduced cost, then we have a winning solution that's actually going to be adopted. So I'm excited to say that although our goal was to reduce the footprint by 35%, we have achieved 45 to 55%, depending on exactly how we deploy the technology. And there's some added benefits on the environmental side. When we move from a straight line grid pattern to more of these meandering lines, we start to reduce easy access to the lines and line of sight. This can help reduce the amount of travel on the line, and also help protect some of the wildlife populations that may be impacted by predators moving into the area. So there's significant environmental benefits to it. And then in order to verify the emissions reduction, we tracked all the equipment in the field for both the conventional method of acquiring seismic as well as the EcoSeis method. We also looked at the different habitats that we are in. When we are cutting seismic lines, we're using modern techniques which utilize a mulcher, but that generates a lot of biomass. So how does that decompose over the time, and how can we reduce that? And then we also want to reduce the travel on the lines, because the more you travel a line through the peatlands, the more methane that can be released from the soil. So in going through all the calculations, we found that we can reduce the CO2 and the methane ranging from about 44 to up to 58%. This is an example of the data. So, we can reduce the environmental footprint, we can reduce the emissions, but we must get matching data for this to be valid. So this is an example of a conventional seismic section and a gather. For those who are geoscientists, this is very important for extracting rock and fluid properties. And then here we have the EcoSeis example, and you can see that the wiggly lines match each other very closely. We have lots and lots of technical validations that the geoscientists, I'd welcome them to come and visit us and we can share with them. And then we have been publishing this extensively in technical journals and then sharing the results globally. So currently we have a trial that's occurring internationally and a couple trials planned here in Canada. It's been a very collaborative project. Through the CRIN network, we have collaborated with 25 companies directly, and actually I think it's actually maybe 35 companies directly, and up to another a dozen or more indirectly that have benefited from the project. So the next steps in the project, phase 1 was the initial desktop studies. Phase 2 was to go to the field and do a technical trial. And now phase 3 is going to go and do some commercial tests. So to prove that this will work anywhere in the world, we have already a shallow example from oil sands. We are going to go and acquire a deep data set, and we're looking at a CCS site to run this project on, to collect the technical data for the comparison, as well as to look at ways that we can help reduce the cost of monitoring the CO2 plumes by going to a sparser acquisition on the surface. And then we're also going to be deploying it in a couple different locations to test it out with different types of equipment. It doesn't necessarily need miniaturized equipment, although that can enhance the reduction in land footprint, and then see how efficient and cost-effective we can make this in the field. We recently announced that we secured a grant from Emissions Reduction Alberta for a multi-million-dollar project where we will be going and doing these testing. This will be a collaborative effort, and there will be complementary technologies, such as other different types of equipment that will be tested on the project. We're interested in talking to any companies that may have complementary technologies that, in the seismic acquisition space that they'd like to test with us, as well as companies interested in trialing this on any of their sites. So in conclusion, I want to thank CRIN for all their support and sponsorship of the project, as well as all of our project collaborators, from large oil companies through field companies deploying the equipment, other technology providers, environmental companies and universities, technology companies, and then also all of our funders. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Andrea. So we've heard some great technologies, and a lot of experience comes into developing a lot of these technologies. CRIN is also about developing and building new talent. And so on that note, I would like to introduce a brilliant young engineer. Emily Monroe is an innovation engineer in training from Scovan, where she leads the HVAP Indirect Fire Steam Generator Commercial Demonstration Pilot Project. Having a strong passion for energy innovation, Emily draws upon her talent, passion, and experiences with product development at startup companies to support the advancement of this groundbreaking technology. Emily?
Thank you. All right, so I'm here from Scovan. I'm going to talk to you about our HIPVAP indirect fired steam generator commercial pilot demonstration project. Hopefully I can switch the slide. Oh, okay. So HIPVAP is a unique technology that allows the elimination of much of the upstream water deoiling and treating processes conventionally used in SAGD. The technology takes produced water straight from the free water knockout and runs it in a loop where 20% quality steam is generated. This allows the tubes to remain wetted, therefore limiting scale formation alongside a chemical dosing program. Overall, the technology can convert up to 90% of the feed water into steam. The goal of our pilot project was to advance the TRL of this technology from 6 up to 8, which is the last major step for commercialization, as well as co-develop a AI machine learning platform that can help optimize and advance the HIPVAP operations. This graphic just demonstrates the extent of the equipment that can be eliminated using the HIPVAP system, with a lot of the focus on the steam generation section, eliminating a lot of that deoiling and treating, which produces energy waste and capital expenses, as well as operating expenses that can all be eliminated with the HIPVAP technology. So for our pilot project to date, which is still currently in operation, we have successfully designed and commissioned it. The process does successfully generate steam from produced water that is taken straight from the free water knockouts and treaters of the host facility and generates steam that is then put back into their steam header. We also have fully tied in operations to the live facility that allow us to test on this live operating stream, and we've generated over 10,000 cubic meters of steam to date. We've also completed several test series, including our 5 baseline tests, 39 technology validation and exploratory tests, over 830 hours of optimization and performance testing. We've tested on water with up to 8 times higher hardness than the industry average, and we've conducted 2 Orsil bench tests for our paired technology, the Orsil water treatment technology. We're also currently in operation and are going to perform more limit and use case testing to the end of November 2024. Alongside these successes, we've developed a data visualization and analytics platform, which is still currently in development alongside a digital twin and soft sensors. We've also learned a lot of lessons throughout this project, including the fact that some of our non-technology related equipment failures as a result of procuring some lower end equipment for the pilot resulted in a lot of delays, as well as eating up some of our cost savings. We also had a particular case of this where our seal failures for our recirculated brine pump, which is under a pretty severe operating condition, led to most of our downtime for the pilot. We changed to a new hard seal face design later in the pilot, which helped, but we have further advancements planned for our commercial unit. We also learned through a lot of testing that our anti-scalant may not provide as much scale prevention as the cost offset for its use. We had tons of design improvements which we plan to incorporate into our commercial unit, including mostly for the auxiliary equipment of the plant. And finally, we should have focused more on our commercial vision for the product, the AI product, which we could have then sped up the development for. We have lots of opportunities going into our final stage of the testing and commercialization of this technology, including technology suppliers that are looking to help us further reduce the carbon footprint of the technology. We also are interested in partnering with chemical suppliers who could offer cost savings for the technology. And finally, any end users wishing to do further testing or support specific use case testing, or in particular engage in a feed study for the first commercial installation of this product, we are very interested in speaking to. So for next steps of this pilot project, we plan to continue the last stages of our testing until the end of November 2024. We also wish to continue to gather data to advance our Brains AI-powered machine learning platform. And finally, we wish to engage with a prospective client in order to engage in our first feed study and commercial installation of the HIPVAP technology. Here's just our contact information in case you would like to learn more about the HipFab technology or the pilot, or talk to us about those opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, so those were our presentations for this morning, our technology showcases. I'm going to ask Kelly, Andrea, and Emily to join me back up here for a second for some questions. I think so, yeah. Good. Are there any questions in the room? Let's start with that.
Did everyone hear that? Or
Please repeat the question, actually.
yeah, so I wanted to ask how important the CRIN funding was for the development of all these technologies. Like, is there alternative sources of capital that you could have got if there wasn't the CRIN funding?
I would say for us, at the stage we were at with our technology development, that was TRL 6 back in 2022, there weren't any other funds out there that offered the same opportunity of the matching. So CRIN really was instrumental, and I think it sped up our development significantly.
I would echo everything Andrea said for Kathairos. It was absolutely instrumental. We were not in a position, we had 4, maybe 6 employees at 2022, and a great idea, and certainly no customers yet. And we were not in a position to receive any kind of debt financing or otherwise. We had a very small seed round, friends and family financing, and not only the funding, but the exposure and awareness of our product thanks to CRIN. A quick story is that when we were applying for the funding in 2022, we had, my colleague Jacqueline had attended a couple of webinars about the info sessions, and there were some producers on the line, and so she was scouring their email addresses and names of who might be interested in this type of methane elimination partnership technology. And she had thought we would get some small producers. And so in the end as well, I think the fact that we had 2 big companies, Ovintiv and Synovus, put up their hand when we were receiving the funding, spoke as well as to how much they believed in CRIN and that they knew that this was a partnership and a project that would be successful.
Yeah, I would echo all that. And also, of course, CRIN's funding has been instrumental to the HipFab development, advancing the technology's TRL from 6 to 8 and bridging that pre-commercialization gap is, of course, a huge challenge. And any support is super appreciated. And I think that it has definitely helped with the project's advancement and ability to continue learning and extending our testing in order to develop as strong an understanding as we can about the technology.
I have a question. Kelly, you just mentioned that Kathairos went from 4 to 6 employees in 2022 to approximately 55 now. Excellent growth. Can you also comment on the number of sites? Because I know those numbers, but I don't know if our audience knows those numbers.
Sure thing, yes. Of the, let's call it, I think it's 55 or 57 or something as of today, 80% of those are field operators. So, a lot of, there are transportation network throughout the US. So very small head office here in Calgary and lean. We've always been lean. But as we grow, we're able to now have proper marketing department, sales department, not everybody wearing every hat and crisscrossing all over the country to Pittsburgh one week, Denver another week, Houston another week. But one more thing that I will add as it relates to our sites now. So we're servicing over 2,000 sites, but those are multi-well pads that might have up to 20 wells on them, sometimes 50 wells. So thousands, tens of thousands of wells. But we know there's 1 million to be addressed. So our entire MO has been scale. We have to have a solution for producers that is scalable and effective and affordable, as I mentioned. But one other thing about the CRIN funding that I think is really profound and important to note is that had we not had that funding and that way to say to our Canadian producer partners, look guys, we can do this and it's not going to cost you a dime. Believe in us, believe in this, let's do this together. And you're going to have the support of Alberta's emission offsets program, was what allowed us to get a foothold in Alberta, where it's been slower I'll just say Alberta's been slower to adopt clean technologies. We're seeing the news articles all the time about the brain drain of clean tech going south for good reason. The funding there is now catching up. But what CRIN did was allow us to stake our claim or put a stake in the ground in Alberta, build out our Canadian company here to service the US. So that's been a secondary thing. We know Canada will come, but we wouldn't have had a company that was able to expand into the US without that Canadian chance.
Andrea, I'm going to ask you the same question. Can you tell us about your scaling of operations since you started with CRIN? And I actually want to go back to even maybe before you started with CRIN. When you started out, you won an award that was in a challenge, an industry challenge?
Yes, yeah. So our journey is rather interesting. We started the company in 2011 to provide geophysical consulting services to oil and gas companies here in Alberta. And from 2011 to 2020, we grew quite a bit, hundreds of projects for dozens of clients worldwide. And then we started developing software too, mostly to solve the problems we had internally, but we had a pull from clients. They saw the software, they wanted to get it into their companies as well, so we got into software development. But I would say that our biggest focus was on solving problems and finding solutions for clients. So we began looking at what are some of the challenges in industry. And in 2017, COSIA had identified this land footprint challenge. We began to work with clients on different solutions for that, and it was actually one of our clients that pushed us into the technology development space in 2020 when they recommended that we submit our ideas to the Imperial Clean Tech Challenge. And that's what kicked off the whole OptiSeis journey. From there, through COVID came about, and that actually gave us a unique opportunity of time. And we got some funding from Alberta Innovates and COSIA to do our initial development and desktop studies. That led to winning an award in the COSIA Foresight Alberta Innovates Clean Tech Challenge in 2021. And that, along with some successes we saw in the initial desktop studies, what prompted us and our partners to apply to CRIN for funding to actually take this to the field. So from there, I think when we first started the CRIN project, we had 3 employees. We've now grown to nearly 20 employees and consultants. And we've done several different field trials, and now we're moving on to the full commercialization.
Thank you. Emily, I'm going to ask you a similar question. Knowing that Scovan is actually currently between TRL 6 and 7 in their technology, is that correct?
Yeah, I guess it's pretty much at
Yeah.
8 because we're almost done, but yeah, 6,
Yeah.
7.
And how many employees are currently at Scovan?
We've actually gone through quite a rapid period of growth, so I think we're at about 400. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. We're about 400, but our innovation team kind of operates as our own little unit, so it kind of feels like a smaller team and a bigger team at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea what it was 2 years ago? No, probably not. That's okay.
Shout it out.
Okay. Yeah. So for those online, we just heard that the original innovation team was about 4 or 5 and is today 4 or 5, but has joined the larger Scovan team. Thank you. Okay, I have a different direction of a question. We heard today a couple of numbers about methane emissions abatement, and a couple of numbers about land disturbance reductions, and some numbers about, well, less numbers, but the technology to help clean up water. How instrumental is it for you to be able to talk about these things, and how is that being affected by the approval of Bill C-59 and the anti-greenwashing regulations? Anyone can start.
Yeah, I think that it's a challenge in that, you've put all this time and effort into a project. You really want to share all the different things that you can do with that project, and really just the exciting results that you're getting. And it is, a challenge when you have to be careful. You don't really know what you can and cannot share. It's, it is definitely a challenge. I don't want to speak too much to it, but.
I would like to speak to this because we have third-party verification. And unfortunately, as a result of that bill, many of the supporting companies are no longer able to share news about our successes, which is quite sad, because they have been supporting us throughout this entire journey. And until there's more clarification, even though we have the third-party verification, there's concerns from the sponsors over this sort of stuff. So I really hope that CRIN can continue to promote our companies and talk about the good work that we're doing. And I think that's one place where you can differentiate yourself.
Thank you. Yes, I think it goes without saying, I think we can all agree that, truth in anything we're saying is imperative, and trust, of course, as well. So we all understand that, but I do also believe that so much of the work being done right now has been quiet, and I'm specifically speaking to the oil and gas industry, for so long, and far too quiet, far too buttoned up. I'll say this as an outside marketing communicator from Calgary who always didn't work in oil and gas, but would use them as an example of what not to do when, gaining trust and public license and the rest of it. And awareness, just for the sake of the greater good, awareness of what energy transition is, what energy is, as Canadians and beyond. So important. And so, of course, we could talk about, the bit of hypocrisy from governmental levels in terms of stating claims and goals, et cetera. And then pressing that on to industry to, do better. But I also feel like, just like Andrea said, we have so much third-party verification, so much empirical data that has had to be vetted and proven out, even just through, the Alberta emission offset system, whereby we had to fight for the protocol for nitrogen to be accepted as a methane mitigation tactic that could qualify for offsets, which are third-party verified and have been sold and traded on the carbon market here in Calgary or in Alberta's market for several years now. Really, above board, transparent, verifiable, et cetera. We stand behind those. And I just, as a citizen, if I put on that hat and take off my Kathairos marketing hat, I just think it's so important for us to be able to tell these stories of the good that is being done, because I was naive to it until I saw the passion and the expertise and the truth behind what these companies are also doing, and in terms of making it better. There's no one that I've met across North America, in the field, in the office, that hasn't said we can do better, and we're getting there, we're doing it. And so to hinder or stop, or at least even close that off at all, is crazy. It's mystifying, I think, to all of us. But we're not stopping telling stories. We're even Ovintiv. I'm headed to film something with them and Doig River First Nation right after this. And so I really admire the companies that are, continuing to not only do their work they're doing, but also to ensure that they are willing and able to talk about it, regardless of some of the red tape, is what I would call it. I don't think we should hide, and I think, easy for me to say, I'm not a lawyer or someone who's defending my, company, but it's crazy for us to not tell the good stories.
So CRIN is a network that exists really for the acceleration of the development, commercialization, and adoption of technology, clean tech for Canada. As we grow, and we are growing quite a bit, what can we continue to do or do more of, or something new, to support you in your journey?
I guess I have the mic. Helping companies move through the technology readiness levels is critical. and particularly getting into the commercialization and early commercialization phase. So I think that the opportunity that CRIN represents is that partnership with industry, and like both of you were saying, by having that ability for industry to come in and lower their risk because there isn't as much cost, like you can take into account in-kind contributions and stuff, that's extremely helpful because you need to get lots of the demonstrations out and the technology on lots of sites for it to be adopted worldwide.
I fully agree with Andrea. I would also say just fostering collaboration, communication, maybe even in the most intimate manner possible. I think that we can all agree we've sometimes put our head down too hard and not popped up to get some mentorship, feedback, advice, etc. We're applying for awards, we're showcasing at events, we're joining associations, and it's a lot, and it's a scramble when you're a startup or you're small or you're trying to get off the ground. It's exhausting. But there's not much that I'm more proud of than Calgary's clean tech scene. And it saddens me to see it dispersing or potentially not losing steam because of perhaps an industry that is just a little slower to adopt than our US counterparts, for example, or global, for various reasons, many of them very valid. And so I think that it's so important for us to figure out a way to maintain that edge and not lose hope of the fact that, or be discouraged by the fact that a lot of these companies are now selling into the US, so be it. But I think that what's been really neat for me is to be at trade shows in Houston, look around the room and realize that 9 out of 10 of the clean tech companies in the room are from Calgary. And to think, well, we're either all really big suckers for booth space, or as a private equity firm from Houston said to me, no, Kelly, Canada has led in this space because they threw opportunity, investment, and need at it faster, and you're leading, and don't let that slip away. So how do we continue to foster and celebrate that versus lament the fact that perhaps it hasn't been as easy as we hoped?
Yeah, I'm all for more steam. I think that in bridging that pre-commercialization gap and really developing that technology, it's so important to have partners and different people whose insights you can get, whether it's just a small little, oh, once I did this and this is what happened, or if it's, a larger partner that might be able to go into the future with you and your technology. I think those introductions are super, super helpful, and understanding how everyone's technology can kind of fit into that larger ecosystem is super important. So I think that continuing to support that is very critical.
Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you all for joining us online and in the room. Our next Project Cafe is on October 15th. If you haven't joined the network already, please join. Network is only as strong as its members. There's also a QR code on your screen. Let us know what you think. Give us any feedback that you have. Have a great day.